motivation for painting ebbs and flows.
Sometimes you'll have so much enthusiasm for what you're doing, and then other times you won't want to look at a paintbrush again. This year I found myself in a bit of a creative rut, and I have struggled to get myself out of it. To be fair, I didn't realise that I was struggling creatively for a long time. For the past couple of months, I felt like the reason that I couldn't get anything done was simply because I was being lazy. But it has taken a while to come around to the fact that I've just not really been feeling my usual creative self. I actually started out the year full of good intentions and I was raring to go. I was so excited about a new painting challenge that I started where I was painting a new miniature wildlife painting each week. I had lots of plans for YouTube, I was keeping on top of things, and I was really excited for the year ahead. But obviously, that has not continued. In March, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, I ended up having a break from painting. And the downside of doing a weekly painting challenge is it really doesn't take a lot of time for you to miss too many weeks to realistically be able to catch up on. So even when I did start painting again, I didn't want to jump back into that challenge because too much time had passed and I'd missed too many paintings. I found myself being a little bit directionless. I didn't really know what to focus on, so even when I did come back to painting, it wasn't with the same level of enthusiasm that I had before. I don't know if perhaps you can relate, but I was getting ridiculously distracted every time I sat down to paint. I would take so many breaks from my painting. I found that I was just getting frustrated. I would stare at my phone trying to think of what I wanted to paint, procrastinating and not getting started. Eventually, I would choose something that didn't usually work out because I didn't really want to paint it in the first place. I found myself making excuses to get up and make cups of tea all the time and just really do anything else besides the job of just sitting down and painting.
I think your motivation can come and go for lots of different reasons, and I think part of trying to fix it is figuring out where it's gone wrong in the first place. For me, because it's a combination of things, I felt like I needed lots of different solutions. So the first thing that I decided to do was take a break.
It's pretty nice going down that big hill over there, but now it means I gotta go back up and I'm not looking forward to that bit. For me, taking a break started with going outside and going for long hikes. This wasn't necessarily always about finding painting inspiration because that isn't really taking a break from art, but it was just to spend some time exercising, going to nice places, and just taking a break away from the easel. This hill is one of those where every time you reach what you think is the top, it's not the top, it just keeps going. It will be worth it when we're at the top. I also spent that time doing less strenuous things like reading, like catching up with friends and family, trying to play the bass guitar, although not so well, and just generally keeping myself away from art so that I eventually started to miss it. And there was a bit of me that was kind of wanting to get back into it again.
The next step for me when I eventually came back to painting was to rediscover my inspiration. Again, I've talked about this in lots of other videos. You will know that I get my inspiration from nature, so that meant spending time outside.
I kind of view this time as different to taking a break. So before, although I was still going out in nature because that's one of my favorite things to do, it wasn't necessarily to go out with the intention of finding something to paint from. It was more about just going out and taking a break and doing something else that I enjoyed. But this part of the plan was to intentionally spend some time surrounded by the things that normally make me feel really creative and actively go and search for some painting inspiration. I had been up really early one morning. I had been watching the football super early, and then I didn't want to get back to bed afterwards. I decided just to stay up for the day. And it's not often that I am up so early and ready to go. So I decided to use that time to go for a walk and see what early morning wildlife I could find. And that is what we're looking at right now. I do think it's weird how I need nudging to go and do these things because once I'm out doing something like this, it's also lovely. I do often wonder why I don't do this all the time, but I think sometimes we just get into a routine of the way that we do things and we don't think to break outside of that box. But doing this walk on this morning gave me enough painting inspiration to last for the whole week and potentially longer. It gave me so many new ideas and it left me feeling so much more creativity than I had before I started. I ended up finding this beautiful collection of rabbits, and it was like, I can't describe it. I mean, I've shared a lot of footage with you. I'm probably pushing it when it comes to the amount of rabbit footage you probably want to see, but it was just so lovely. And I feel like I wanted you to experience it in the way that I did, where you're just surrounded by lovely wildlife. There were birds singing in the background. It was early morning. No one else was really out at that time. I found myself around the corner from these rabbits, hidden by some longer grass. And eventually it was like they just got used to me being there and they kept coming closer and closer. And I saw all the kinds of behavior that normally you wouldn't get to see, and it was so worthwhile going out and looking for painting inspiration so early in the morning.
After I had finished taking all of my breaks and appreciating wildlife and reconnecting with that inspiration again, I also needed to figure out how I could make my painting experience fun again and something that I was actually looking forward to, because you don't want it to be a chore. So I would put on my favourite playlist or put on a podcast I really enjoy listening to, put my pajamas on. Not today, because it is absolutely boiling. We are in the middle of a heat wave, but that is a side note. Anyway, normally I just put something comfy on and I'll make myself a cup of tea. I will have some snacks available to me and I will just listen to my favourite music and I will sit and I will paint. And it's very enjoyable. I also think it is worthwhile painting the things that you enjoy.
I do think when you've taken a break from painting, then it can be tempting to just kind of jump right back in where you left off and get right back into commissions and the projects you were working on before. And whereas that is important, I wanted to make sure that first of all, I did a project or a painting that I was really excited about. For me, I really enjoy painting in miniature. I like doing standalone wildlife pieces that are kind of more like illustrations than a full painting, and I like to paint wildlife, so that's what I did. I did this rabbit painting and I did a few other smaller projects that really made me excited to paint again, and that got me right back into the routine. I also wanted to stop restricting myself.
I felt like this year I have tried to find a little bit of a niche and to stick to similar projects because I'm trying to develop my business.
I wanted my paintings to have some consistency to them in order to help my business to grow and for clients to be able to have an idea of what it was that I was focusing on. I am quite a scatterbrained artist and I do like working on lots of different projects. And as exciting as that is for me, it's not always the easiest thing for people to keep up with. If you're constantly changing the thing that you're working on, it is hard for people to follow your progress or maybe be repeat customers because they never know what you're going to be working on next. So this year I have tried to be a little bit more consistent, but I think what I did was take it too far the other way and get a little bit too restrictive, and that definitely restricted my creativity and has inevitably led to this lack of creativity that I've been feeling this year. I quite fancied doing some watercolour paintings a little earlier on in this week, especially after being inspired by my time out in nature. And so, whereas I normally would have said, no, Rachel, concentrate on oil paintings because that's what you want to do, this time I just gave into it and I got my sketchbook out. I did a page full of rabbit paintings and poppy paintings. I wrote a poem in there because I felt inspired to do so. And I'm glad I did it. Sometimes your creativity will take you in a different direction, and instead of fighting against it, I decided to lean into it this week. And yeah, I am glad I did, because although I realized that I don't want to be a full-time watercolor artist, I do prefer oils. It led to lots of new ideas for paintings later on down the line. Just by being able to express myself in a slightly different way, it gave me so much inspiration for future paintings, and I'm really glad that I've said that 3 times now, but I appreciated the exercise because it really helped me in the long run. So, all of those things up to that point were kind of typical stuff like taking a break and spending time around things that were inspiring, but the last point is probably the one that made the biggest difference, and that was a bit more unexpected. And it wasn't to do with being outdoors or being in nature, although that is obviously pretty lovely. The thing that actually made the biggest difference was setting myself some goals, which sounds kind of boring, so we're going to talk about it while we walk in nature and make it seem a bit more interesting. But basically, setting goals was something that I didn't realise was all that tied up in being creative, but it really made the biggest difference. I think it's easy to think that by having objectives and things to work towards, then maybe that's restricting some of your creative freedom, which is what I was talking about the first time around in the previous point. But what I have found is that if I don't have something specific to be working towards, then I don't really achieve very much and I procrastinate a lot. I think I'm the kind of person that does need a goal or something in mind to be working towards, because without that, I'm a bit directionless and I just don't get anything done. So setting myself some goals has given me something to work towards, and that enthusiasm has come back. Look, the teasel is in flower, and there's a bee on this one somewhere. How lovely. Look, now there's 2. This is so nice. I think it's good to have a balance. It's good to be able to have your creative freedom, which is what I was talking about in the previous point, and be able to work on whatever you want. But I do like to have something to work towards as well. And I think without that sense of direction, it's really easy to just let things slide and lose enthusiasm because you're not working towards something in particular. Because I really want to build up a career in this field, then if I don't feel like there is something I'm working towards, then there's no wonder my enthusiasm kind of drains a little bit. So that for me really has made the biggest difference, I would say, in this whole rediscovering my creative spark journey. The goals that you set yourself could be absolutely anything. For me, I wanted them to be business related because ultimately I would like to be a professional artist more full time rather than as something that I do every now and then. And so, as part of that, one thing I have been wanting to do for ages is set up my own tutorials. It's constantly being put on the back burner because it has come to my attention that I don't really paint in a way that is logical. Every time I have tried to record a tutorial in the past, I've given up on it because I go off script. I end up making a bit of a mess with my painting. I make it up as I go along. There's no real logic to why I do the things that I do, and so it's really difficult to explain my painting process. But I've decided that I don't really need to overcomplicate things. I'm going to start out with some simple painting tutorials that'll be a bit easier for me to explain, like this poppy painting right here that will be small, simple, not too much detail, and I'm going to aim to do one of those a month and hopefully progress into something a bit more detailed once my process makes a bit more sense. I have a few other ideas as well that I've been working towards that might involve using stamp fans. I've not used it before, I only heard of it for the first time last week, so if you have any experience of it, let me know. But it's given me a lot of encouragement and it's helped me to do lots of paintings with the idea that there are specific things that I'm going to be able to work towards. So, I guess to summarise, if you too are feeling like you're in a creative rut, I would say take a break. Obviously, if you do this professionally, it might not be as easy to do that, but if you can take a break, surround yourself with the things that inspire you as often as you can. Think of ways to make your painting experience fun, so it's not like a chore anymore, but it's something that you actually look forward to. Give yourself a bit of creative freedom to explore different ideas, to follow where your creativity, that's not a word, wherever your creativity is taking you, because you never know what that might lead to. And set yourself some goals, have some things to aim towards that kind of give you that drive and that inspiration to keep going. When I first started making this video, I didn't really know where it was going to lead. I was kind of hoping that I would rediscover my creative spark along the way, but you never really know with projects like this. And the fact that it has worked and I do feel much more enthusiastic is a huge bonus. And I hope that there was something in there that will be helpful to you as well. So I'm going to end by sharing with you some of the paintings that I have worked on during the last few weeks, and also the poem that was inspired by this place and the themes of this video. Today. Today, I'll beat the sunrise. Today, I'll be serenaded. I'll hear whispers calling me back to where I belong. A reminder of what matters. A welcome back home. Inquisitive friends wonder where I have been. Today I find the spark. Today, I'll beat the sunrise.